Almost every scale you know sounds the same going up as it does coming down. Play a major scale up to the top and back, and the notes on the way down are simply the notes on the way up, in reverse. Same 7 letters, same shapes, just running the other way. The melodic minor breaks that rule. It actually changes which notes you play depending on the direction you are heading. Climb up and it leans one way, brighter, smoother, reaching for the top. Then turn around and come back down and it quietly swaps 2 of its notes for darker ones, settling back into shadow. 1 scale, 2 faces, decided entirely by whether you are rising or falling. That sounds like a strange thing for a scale to do, almost like cheating, and the first time you meet it, it can feel like a trick someone invented to make theory harder. It is the opposite. Every part of it solves a real problem your ear can hear. We will build it from the note A, the cleanest home there is, hear it change direction, and find out exactly why anyone would design a scale this way. It starts with a problem the previous minor scale left behind. To see why melodic minor exists, look at what came just before it, the harmonic minor. The plain natural minor has one weakness: its top note, the 7th, sits a whole step below home, so it never really leans into the resting note the way a major scale does. The pull back home feels weak. To fix that, the harmonic minor raises only the 7th, lifting G up to G sharp so it sits just a half step under home and leans hard into the note A above it. That single change gives the scale a strong, satisfying pull back to the home note, and for harmony it works beautifully. But it opens a new wound. Between the 6th, which is still a plain F, and that raised 7th, G sharp, there is now a jump of 3 half steps. Most scale steps are 1 or 2 half steps, a half step or a whole step. 3 half steps in a row is something bigger, a leap your voice has to reach for. Listen to that gap. F up to G sharp is wider than any normal scale step, an awkward lurch that is genuinely hard to sing smoothly. Singers stumble over it, and melodies built on it sound a little stiff and exotic, like a desert scale rather than a singable line. So the harmonic minor solved one problem, the weak pull home, and created another, this clumsy gap in the middle of the upper scale. The melodic minor is the elegant answer to that gap. Here is the fix going up. Instead of raising only the 7th and leaving that hole, the melodic minor raises both the 6th and the 7th. In a minor that means F becomes F sharp and G becomes G sharp. By lifting the 6th up to meet the raised 7th, the 3 half step gap collapses into 2 ordinary whole steps. Watch the line now: A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and home to A. That awkward 3 half step lurch is gone, smoothed into 2 even steps. The ascending melodic minor climbs cleanly, every step the size your ear expects, no leaps, no stumbles. And crucially, you keep what the harmonic minor was after in the first place, because the raised 7th still leans hungrily into the home note at the top, that half step of tension that makes the arrival feel earned. So you get the best of both at the smooth, even rise, and a strong pull home. It is the line a singer would naturally reach for if you asked them to climb a minor scale and make it feel finished at the top. But notice that everything good about this version, the smoothness and the pull, is about going up, about reaching a goal above you. Coming down, the situation is completely different, and the scale knows it. On the way back down, the whole reason for raising those notes disappears. The raised 7th existed to pull you up to the top, to lean into the home note above it. But once you have reached the top and you are descending, there is nothing above to lean toward. You are moving away from that high home, not toward it, so that built-in tension is no longer needed, and in fact it would fight the relaxed, downward feel of a falling line. So traditionally the descending melodic minor simply reverts to the plain natural minor. G sharp drops back to G natural, and F sharp drops back to F natural. The brightness that helped you climb is allowed to fade as you settle. Coming down you play A, G, F, E, D, C, B, and home to A, the dark, settled natural minor you already know from before. Put the two directions together and the personality of the whole scale becomes clear. Smooth and bright climbing up, shadowed and resigned coming down. The same scale wears two different faces, and which one you hear is decided purely by direction. That is what makes it special, and also what makes students nervous. There is no single fixed set of notes you can memorize once. You have to think about where you are going. But the logic underneath is consistent, and once you hear why each direction sounds the way it does, you never really forget it. There is a neat way to lock the ascending form into your memory, by seeing what it really is in disguise. Take a plain major scale and lower only its third by a half step. That single change is the entire difference between a major scale and a rising melodic minor. Listen to A major climbing, A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, bright, open, unmistakably happy. Now drop just the third, C sharp down to C natural, and you have A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, the ascending melodic minor. Everything else stays exactly where the major scale put it. Only one note separates a rising melodic minor from a full major scale, and it is the third. That is a powerful shortcut, because if you already know your major scales, you already nearly know every ascending melodic minor. Play the major scale, flatten the third, done. It also explains the sound. That is why it sounds so bright on the way up, almost too cheerful for something with the word minor in its name. It is a major scale wearing a single shaded note, the lowered third doing all of the minor coloring while the rest of the scale, the sixth and seventh near the top, stays sunlit. The minor feeling is real, but it is concentrated in one note rather than spread across the whole climb. Now, some musicians never bother reverting on the way down at all. They keep the raised sixth and seventh in both directions, the same shape climbing and the same shape descending, and treat the result as a single fixed scale. Going up, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. Coming down, the exact same notes in reverse, A, G sharp, F sharp, E, D, C, B, A. No swapping, no change in your mind. This even version is called the jazz minor, and players treat it as a scale in its own right, not a scale that bends to direction. Why would you want that bright, raised version coming down, when the classical scale deliberately avoids it? Because that unusual flavor, major brightness sitting on a minor home, is interesting rather than awkward once you stop thinking of it as a melody and start thinking of it as a color to improvise with. Its bright, unusual color is exactly why it became a favorite for improvisers, especially in jazz, where that tension between a minor root and an almost major scale gives a line a sophisticated, slightly restless edge. So you really have two scales hiding under one name. The classical melodic minor, which changes with direction, and the jazz minor, one scale, identical up and down, with a flavor all its own. So the recipe is simple once you have heard the reasons behind it. Start from the natural minor, the dark scale you already know. Going up, raise the sixth and the seventh to smooth the climb and keep the pull home. Coming down, let them fall back to natural for a darker descent, because the reaching is over. That is the classical melodic minor, bright rising, shadowed falling, a scale that genuinely changes with the direction you travel. Keep those same raised notes in both directions instead, and you have the jazz minor, even and distinctive, prized as an improviser's color. Two related scales, one underlying idea, both worth carrying in your ear. A scale that changes its notes by direction is rare, and understanding why it does is a real step up in how you hear minor music. There is one more knot left to untangle, though, and it trips up almost everyone. The word minor gets attached to a major scale in two completely different ways, and people constantly confuse them. Next we sort out the two minor relationships people mix up most, the parallel minor and the relative minor, same name against same notes.